Sometimes the ones who hurt you most seem untouched, thriving even while you're left picking up the pieces. But don't be fooled by surface-level success. In the world of Stoic philosophy, justice rarely arrives with noise. It arrives in silence within. Karma doesn't show up with flashing lights or public announcements. It moves slowly, invisibly, and always with precision. While you're focused on healing, growing, and letting go, something is quietly unfolding in their lives. The people who lied, manipulated, and betrayed, they may have smiled as they walked away, but life has a way of circling back. Stoics don't waste time chasing payback. They trust that consequences don't need an audience to be real. Because when karma begins its quiet work, it speaks a language only the guilty understand through sleepless nights, restless thoughts, and an unshakable sense of imbalance. In this video, we'll uncover 5 hidden signs that someone is already being visited by karma, not through punishment you can see, but through emotional and spiritual weight they can't escape. This isn't about revenge. It's about reality. The kind of truth that settles in deep, beyond what anyone else notices, until it's too heavy to hide. If you've ever wondered whether people really get what they deserve, you won't want to miss this. The answers lie not in their words, but in their silence. The first quiet sign that karma has begun its work is this: they appear happier than ever. Out of nowhere, the one who disappeared on you, the one who lied, betrayed, or made you feel like you were the villain in your own story, suddenly seems to be thriving. Their social media is full of staged smiles, carefully filtered moments and captions about new beginnings. They're laughing in places that never mattered before. They're surrounded by new faces, ones who weren't there when you gave them your all. And if you're not paying attention, you might be fooled into thinking they've truly moved on, that they're better off, that maybe you were the one holding them back. But don't be deceived by curated illusions. Real peace doesn't crave validation, but pain disguised as happiness that always needs an audience. You've likely seen this pattern before. After the fallout, after they cut you off, blamed you, or left without explanation, there's a brief silence. Then, as if on cue, a flood of pictures, deep quotes, and sudden transformations begin. It's a performance, not for healing, but for show. A desperate attempt to convince the world and themselves that they feel nothing. But something is off. The laughter looks forced. The eyes give away a story the smile tries to erase. There's a nervous energy behind the confident captions. Why? Because true joy is still not showy. Because when you destroy something genuine, no amount of pretending can patch the void left behind. As the Stoics teach us, Epictetus said, "Our power lies not in events, but in our responses." And Marcus Aurelius reminded us that revenge is best served by becoming better, not bitter. That's why the Stoic doesn't chase explanations. They don't need to monitor someone else's timeline to understand the past. They simply detach and keep walking. Because while the other person is busy trying to project peace, karma is quietly peeling back their illusions bit by bit. It doesn't crash in suddenly. It erodes what's false slowly. It removes what once distracted them from the truth. And that truth is this: they lost someone who actually cared. Someone who didn't want to win, but wanted to build. And no fake glow-up, no rebound relationship, and no motivational quote can silence the whisper that echoes when they're alone. I ruined something real. So let them perform. Let them pose. Let them try to outshine the shadow of what they lost. Because you don't need to prove anything. You already know what's real doesn't require noise. And they know it too, even if they'll never admit it out loud. The second quiet sign that karma is unfolding is when life starts gently removing the very things they once took for granted. It's rarely dramatic. No explosions. No public collapse. Karma works with surgical precision, dismantling from within, not to humiliate, but to reveal. People often imagine karma as thunderous events, huge losses, sudden disasters, or emotional devastation. But the Stoic view reminds us real consequence doesn't need to make noise. It begins with subtraction, not destruction. First, it's subtle. They lose a connection here, an opportunity there. A trusted friend grows distant. An invitation doesn't come. A door they expected to open suddenly shuts, and they don't even realize it. They brush it off as bad timing or bad luck. But over time, these small vanishings pile up, and slowly, they begin to understand what once felt abundant is now slipping through their fingers like sand. These are the things they mishandled when they had them. The support, the patience, the presence of someone who genuinely cared. Maybe they once mocked your vulnerability, called you too sensitive, or accused you of caring too much. Maybe they laughed off your compassion as weakness. But what they failed to see was the strength it took to keep showing up with love, even when they offered little in return. You were there for them in the late-night breakdowns, the moments of self-doubt, the chaos they didn't know how to navigate. You stayed. You believed. You carried more than your share, just to keep the connection alive. And for all that, they gave you excuses, distance, or silence. They treated your presence like background noise instead of a rare gift. But you stopped. You let go, not with anger, but with clarity. And while they may have felt untethered and free at first, that space you left behind began to speak. The quiet got louder. The absence became a mirror. And in that mirror, they no longer saw the person they used to be when they had your love. They saw someone who chased attention but lost connection. Someone surrounded by people who mirrored their selfishness, not their soul. Karma doesn't take revenge, it holds a mirror. It shows them who they've become and what they've let slip away. It removes comfort, trust, and warmth, not as punishment, but as revelation. It whispers through empty victories and shallow relationships that no one truly sees them anymore. Not like you did. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't waste time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." That's what you did. And that's what they didn't. So karma, quiet and unrelenting, strips away everything that doesn't align with truth and forces them to live in what remains. Let them sit with that loss. Let them realize that no amount of noise can replace the peace they once felt in your presence. No one can imitate what you gave, because no one else came from the same place of depth care and genuine love. When someone rambles in every conversation but your name still lingers in their mind, karma is already doing its work. Not by punishing them, but by reminding them of everything they lost when they stopped valuing what was real. And they'll feel that weight, not in public, but in the quiet spaces of their soul. The third unmistakable sign that someone is quietly being visited by karma is this: you still live rent-free in their mind, even if they act like you never existed. They won't mention your name, not out loud, not in front of others, and certainly not on purpose. But if you pay attention, you'll see it. In the cryptic quotes they share, in the moody captions about trust loss, betrayal, and self-worth. On the surface, it seems vague, even random. But you know better, because you used to know them deeply. Their tone, their rhythms, their emotional fingerprints. When they say, "Some people never appreciate what they had," or "I've outgrown fake energy," They're not just expressing personal growth. They're speaking through the cracks of guilt. The quotes they post aren't wisdom, they're shadows. The kind of words people choose when they're haunted, but don't want to admit it. They're hoping someone sees it, maybe even hoping you see it, but they'll never say it directly. Why? Because that would mean acknowledging what they lost and the part they played in losing it. It's not closure they're after. It's control. Control over how the story is told, even after you've walked away. So they dance around the truth with poetic sadness, dressing up regret to look like resilience. You might scroll by and feel a strange pull. A quote hits too close. A caption sounds like it was meant for you. It's like reading a message wrapped in riddles. No tags, no names, but all signs point to you. That's not power. That's not peace. That's an unsettled conscience looking for relief. And the irony. The people around them probably have no idea. Their friends see another relatable quote. Their followers double tap, unaware of the real target. But you read between the lines because you used to live between those lines. You were the one who listened to their unspoken pain. And now, those unspoken words echo louder than ever because they're carrying a weight they don't know how to put down. Karma doesn't always look like punishment from the outside. Sometimes it sounds like whispers in the middle of the night. It feels like scrolling through memories you can't delete. It's being followed by a silence that screams louder than any argument ever could. That's karma, not vengeance, but remembrance memories that won't let go, because the heart never made peace with what it did. A Stoic doesn't fight fire with fire. They don't post cryptic comebacks or quote battles. They don't need to clap back, because their peace doesn't rely on anyone else's confusion. As Epictetus said, if someone speaks ill of you, live so that no one believes it. Let that be your response. So when they keep posting, keep dropping hints, keep talking in circles, don't engage. Don't clarify. Don't stoop. Let them talk around your name while you keep rising above it. Because your silence speaks with more clarity than any statement ever could. They may have removed you from their contact list, but they didn't erase you from their thoughts. They may pretend you're gone, but their words betray them. And karma has a way of locking people inside their own guilt, especially when they've hurt someone who loved them with honesty and depth. Let them be loud in their healing if they must. Let them paint over regret with spiritual slogans and half-truths. You've moved on, but they're still standing in the mess they made, trying to make sense of why peace feels so far away. Because the truth is, when you betray someone genuine, you don't just lose that person. You lose the version of yourself that felt safe in their presence. And that version, it doesn't come back. That's why the mind becomes the harshest prison of all. And the more they speak in riddles, the clearer it becomes you left, but they never did. The fourth sign that someone is quietly receiving the weight of their karma is when their ability to trust the world begins to fade. And then, little by little, so does their ability to trust themselves. On the outside, it might look like self-awareness or personal growth. They'll say they're just being cautious, that they're tired of fake people, that they're protecting their energy now. They keep their circle small. They avoid vulnerability. They wear detachment like armor. But beneath the surface, what they're really carrying is not strength, it's fear. A quiet, gnawing fear born from the knowledge of what they've done. Fear that someone will hurt them in the very way they once hurt someone else. They talk about boundaries, but these aren't boundaries, they're walls. And these walls weren't built from wisdom. They were built from guilt. They didn't always live this way. You remember, they used to be open, lighthearted, maybe even careless. They laughed without watching their back, trusted quickly, spoke freely. But something shifted. Not in the way they move through the world, but in the way they see it. Now they question everyone's motives. They interpret kindness with suspicion. Silence feels threatening. Love feels like a setup. And even when people show up for them with honesty, they can't believe it's real. Why? Because deep down, they've come face to face with the truth of their own actions. They know what they're capable of. And when you've once betrayed someone who truly loved you, it rewires your understanding of human nature. You start to assume everyone else has the same potential to destroy, to deceive, to abandon. Not because it's true, but because that's exactly what you did. That knowledge becomes a shadow that follows you everywhere. This is karma at its most personal and piercing. It doesn't come crashing in like a storm. It seeps in quietly through doubt, through suspicion, through the slow erosion of inner stability. It's not loud. It doesn't make a scene. But it dismantles you, piece by piece. The confidence that once allowed them to believe they were untouchable now whispers a different message. Maybe I'm the one who broke it. Maybe I'm the reason nothing feels right anymore. And that realization is paralyzing. Seneca once wrote that the person who does wrong rarely trusts others because they carry an intimate awareness of their own capacity to harm. That's what the Stoics understood better than anyone, that your peace isn't determined by the outside world. It's shaped by the state of your conscience. When your actions betray your own values, when you hurt someone who did nothing but care, the consequences don't just show up in your circumstances. They show up in the fracture lines of your soul. Karma doesn't always deliver chaos or public fallout. Sometimes it chooses a quieter route. It haunts the mind. It slips into moments that should feel joyful and turns them bitter. It shows up when they finally have something good, but they can't relax. They feel unworthy. They sabotage. They flinch at love because they think it's a trick. That's not just insecurity. It's the mind punishing itself for what the heart refused to take responsibility for. Let them exist in that space. Let them doubt. Let them grow afraid of the very shadow they once cast over others. Because karma doesn't just leave people with memories, it takes away the calm they once felt before they compromised their integrity. The cruelest prison isn't a cell or a punishment delivered from the outside. It's the mental cage built by your own conscience where every thought becomes a guard, reminding you of what you've done. And if they can no longer believe in people, if their world has become too small, too suspicious, too guarded, don't take that burden as yours to fix. It's not your responsibility to return just to prove that kindness still exists. That was never your role. You offered them the truth. They gave you betrayal. Now life is showing them what they traded it for, not dramatic ruin, but a slow, silent collapse of inner trust. Karma doesn't shout. It hands you a mirror and walks away. What happens next is between you and your own reflection. The fifth and most undeniable sign that someone is quietly reaping the consequences of their actions is this life introduces them to someone just like themselves. Not a minor inconvenience. Not a typical mismatch. But a mirror. A living, breathing reflection of their past behavior, wrapped in charm, beauty, charisma, and emotional allure. At first they believe it's fate. The energy is intense. The connection feels electric, effortless, meant to be. They don't realize they're not stepping into a new love story. They're walking straight into a karmic echo. It feels like magic, like they've finally found someone who understands them on a soul level. But beneath the surface, the lesson is already unfolding. This isn't love. It's a reenactment. And this time, they're no longer the one holding the emotional leverage. They used to play with someone's loyalty like it was disposable. Now they find themselves refreshing their phone for a message that never comes. They used to manipulate silence and affection like weapons. Now they're on the receiving end of hot and cold confusion, flooded with attention one moment and abandoned the next. They once made vulnerability a punchline. Now, when they try to open up, they're met with dismissal, mockery, or worse, emotional distance. They rationalize it at first. They say the person is guarded, complicated, emotionally unavailable. But eventually, something darker begins to surface. A quiet, almost unbearable realization. This is exactly what I used to do to someone who genuinely cared about me. They won't say it out loud. They may never admit it to anyone, not even to themselves. But the recognition is there. It hides in the spaces between their thoughts. It waits in the stillness after another failed connection. It whispers as they lie awake, wondering why they feel so hollow. What they're experiencing now isn't random misfortune. It's alignment. Not punishment, but reflection. Not retaliation, but understanding. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who did the harm." But karma is not interested in revenge. It's far more elegant. It restores balance by giving someone the chance to experience firsthand the exact kind of emotional chaos they once unleashed. Not out of cruelty, but to offer them a perspective they could never have gained otherwise. The laughter they once offered as someone else cried, now met with silence. The indifference they once displayed toward another's pain, now mirrored back with precision. The person they once mistreated, simply because they could now, replaced by someone who toys with their heart the same way. This is the brilliance of karma. It doesn't storm in. It doesn't humiliate or destroy. It reflects. It places a mirror in front of them dressed in desire and wrapped in all the traits they once used to attract. And then, it quietly walks away and lets them learn. They beg. They overthink. They try harder than they've ever tried, only to be left questioning their worth, their sanity, their sense of reality. And no matter how much they twist the story this time, there's no one left to blame. No narrative to rewrite, no person to gaslight. Because what's haunting them now isn't a villain. It's their own behavior returned to them in a different body. You don't need to intervene. You don't need to clap back or prove your innocence. The universe already remembers. You're not meant to be their punishment. You were the lesson they failed to learn. And now, life is giving them the chance to learn it without your help, your presence, or your validation. Let them walk that path alone. Let them feel what it's like to be seen and not chosen. To be emotionally invested, but emotionally ignored. To want clarity and receive only confusion. Because you've already lived it and you rose above it. True karma doesn't just teach a lesson to the one who caused harm. It elevates the one who survived it. It doesn't demand your revenge. It invites your growth. Because your greatest power isn't found in proving you were right. It's found in becoming so whole, so grounded, and so clear that their absence feels like peace, not pain. If someone hurt you and never took responsibility, let them go. If they walked away and acted like it meant nothing, let them keep walking. Not because you're weak, but because you've realized something far more important. You don't need them to hurt in order for you to heal. Peace is your closure. Time is your justice. Your evolution is the most powerful response you'll ever give. So keep walking forward, not with bitterness, but with composure. Not with vengeance, but with strength. Karma doesn't need your help. It only needs your silence. Your presence is no longer theirs to access. And that, more than anything, is what changes everything. You don't need to carry their story anymore. You've outgrown it, and growth makes the loudest statement of all without ever needing to say a word. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this message resonated with you, if you've ever had to rise from silence, rebuild yourself, and find peace without apology, know this: you are not alone. Feel free to leave a comment sharing the one line or idea that hit you the hardest. And if you're walking this path of strength, clarity, and emotional discipline, subscribe to Stoic Wisdom Path today. Here, we don't just talk about healing. We train the mind to lead, not react. We build clarity. We cultivate discipline. We choose silence as power. Let your growth speak louder than your past, and let the world hear it without a sound. Hit subscribe and continue your journey with us. Thank you for being here.